great to be at this facility. It really is. Maybe I need them.
Not as much as me.
You know, that thing about come and show and go and tell. I'm going to be talking about doing and being. So we start with the 35. So it was 2008, 7 years ago. And from 35, within a couple of years, there was growth and we hit 90. And Pastor Peter spoke to both my wife and I to get involved with what we used to call ushering at that time. And we basically got involved in there. We'd actually done it 12 years earlier. He said, I know this is like getting full circle, but could you, there was the lady looking after ushering, Naomi, a lovely girl, was going into London and for career move, and so we took over. And so all we used to have, we got in there, 90 people. This was at the hub. Anyone been to the hub? Great, it's a A as well. So we had 90 people there, and we just got someone greeting a front door, someone seating you, and that was it. We had 2 or 3 ushers, and guess what? Of the 3 ushers, we were the 2 of them. So we were the ushering team, plus 1 or 2, and that's how we started. And over 2 years, it just grew. The church grew from 90 to about 180 in about 2 years, and we moved. Soon after that, we moved to a big building nearby, and suddenly that caused its own problems, because suddenly this is a big space, a bit like yours downstairs space, and suddenly you can't see all the ushers in one cozy room. We had to have 6 different ushers at different parts, different bases as we call them, and we started developing a team. So we had more room, we had more ushers. With that, there were more duties, and we slowly started making, feeling our way. We never planned this. You just keep doing it, and you learn by accident. But one of the biggest things we had was Pastor Peter really is a great developer of leaders, and he said this key thing to us. He said, "Stand back, allow mistakes to happen, and see what happens." And that's how you develop people. And slowly we stood back, and from that time we started developing a team. Previously we were the team, but you can't actually develop a team unless you're overseeing it. And the only way you can do that is you can only lead by standing back, seeing what's going wrong, and then start getting other people to do what you're doing. Otherwise you'll always keep doing what you're doing. And I know from business as well, the risk is too much to let someone else make a mistake. But guess what? If you don't do that, you'll be signing on your pension and you'll still be doing the same thing. And there'll be no team. You'll still be where you were 50 years ago. So we've gone from 35 to 120, and things are working fantastically, and suddenly the floods come, crisis happen, and floods in Surrey, and we lost our hall to the army at about 2 weeks notice, and we were now back in the hub. But the only problem was we were a much bigger church, and suddenly you've got to cope with all these things as a team, and it's great to have developed strong leaders who are helping you do that. And my wife's gifted at process. I don't know if we can put that slide up. So, I'm very good at encouraging, coming alongside. She's good at process. This is a checklist. We talk about, so we developed, with a team, we developed a lot of people. Previously we just had 3 ushers, remember? So now it was called the hosting team. And we have a welcome team. And there's a hospitality team, there's a communion team. And many teams develop as you basically allow more people to come into the team. And the key thing with the team is they'll only do not what you tell them. They'll only do what you model to them. So what Lavni and I were doing at the start we had a spirit, a culture we formed for 2 years. And I tell you, it was terrible because you know, at that time when you're doing it, it's a busy week and you don't want to do this, but you just got to keep doing it until you know you've developed a way of doing things. And then it's easy for people to just pick that spirit. It is a spirit. You can call it culture, but it's a spirit. And as they pick that spirit, that you know, I smile not because I'm working at Disney. I smile because I want to smile. Yeah? I smile because my heart's telling me, not because I'm paid to do it. You know, and there might be a secret agent who's sort of looking at things and deciding how I'm performing. You know, I'm smiling because I want to do it. So the key thing I'd impart into all you leaders is you know, what you're modeling is what your team's going to be. And if you're modeling I'm in cruise control, I'm on second gear, that's all you're going to get. So you've got to push yourself, and that's the biggest thing. And in pushing yourself, the values that Pastor Peter imbibed into the church of heart, you know, honor and excellence, you know, getting things of excellence into our ministries is sort of a hit into the culture you're from at times. It's like, I can do it and it's okay, and like Pastor Peter was saying, don't tell me what to do, I hear from God. You know, you've heard that one? And it's this independence culture that we have, and it's this it's not fair culture that we have, but guess what? With Christ, nothing's fair. You're a bond servant. You don't actually have a free will. That's what Paul said. You know, and that's what you sign up to. But if we go with the culture of the world and try to adopt the Bible, you know, you're in a foot in both camps, and it's not going to work. You either do one or the other. So I think the key thing I'd share, our big experience was the success of the team depended on what we modeled. And partly what we modeled was what we saw with Pastor Peter when he came in. There was a big shift in leadership. But the biggest thing he brought in was a culture of just honoring. And honoring, part of that meant you can speak it, you know, honor people, and you can read books on honoring, but it was putting it down into, well, if someone comes, we're going to honor them as guests. They're like coming into, you know, like you can read Hilton Hotels, Conrad. He you know, looked at each person as a guest, and that's how hospitality industry grew, and Hilton became a fantastic brand. Well, and same thing in their guests who come into our church. How are we honoring them? And what Pastor Peter did, you could see that he wasn't just speaking from the pulpit. He was making decisions of, we're getting the best coffee, we're serving the best food. Now you can say, oh, that's okay, you know, for them, but actually for a church in Surrey, but actually at that time we were 35 people, gone from 200 to 35. Financially, the place was in I could say the C word, in a bad financial state. Yeah, and to do that, despite what the bank account is showing, was a key step. And I feel that was the catalyst for everything that happened afterwards. That you honored who God sent you. That's the guess. That's the, you know, we have. With Abraham, it's always a stranger. Abraham had these 3 guys who appeared suddenly. He's sitting there, and it's the Lord and 2 angels. And what's the thing he does with them? He didn't just say, okay, I'll give you a few crisps and things. He gets a big meal. I think it's like a 7-course meal. It would have been with the amount of time it took to prepare and stuff like that. But it was big. And he fed them fully. But it's interesting. He had been given, I believe, and this is why part of this, I'm now moving to being and doing. I could tell you all about doing, and this is the checklist. This is the doing checklist. This is every Sunday. Every Sunday, this is what's called, that's IC, means items coordinator. So we don't have 3 people now, front door, hall, seating. we've got coordinators, so there's an items coordinator looking after part of the hosting team. There's a safety coordinator looking after another part of the hosting team. Items coordinator looks at everything that's happening on a Sunday service, minute by minute. What's needed for collections? Where are ushers standing? How are they standing? Notices, things need to be given out. So all those are things happening. Who's my team? Where are they standing? What do I need to be doing at what time? How do I need to link in with other people? All that's a checklist. Now, what I'm trying to say is you may think that is OCD. But it isn't, because if we are going to grow and take care of the biggest asset, we need to have excellence in our team. Otherwise, people will come and they'll go. And it's a revolving door. It's a revolving door. And you need to have the right team. Thing I found was we set up a, sorry, I'll go back to, so there's a lot of detail, that's the doing, but that comes from the being. And the point I was trying to make was, here's Abraham being promised something. He wanted a need. He was promised a son, and he's waited 24 years. And he gets these 3 guys, and he's basically feeding them. From that day, 1 year later, he had a child. Yeah, I feel that generosity spirit, that being generous breaks through. You know, we can bind things and do all-night prayer meetings. I just feel that generosity spirit just breaks through any resistance. Yeah, we see that also with Pastor Peter was talking about Jesus feeding the 5,000. You know, all he said was, "Thank you." That thanksgiving and generosity broke that limitation of the disciples. It broke their limitation. So those things break the limitation of your teams. You will start with people who are not qualified. They will not have, if you start recruiting, no one fits the bill. We just got to go with it. Yeah? No one fits the bill. But as you are modeling and as you're being thankful for what you got, as you yourself are living a generous life Monday through to Monday, as I told you, things start happening. That's when we run our miracle. So, feeding the 5,000, that broke the limitation of the disciples. But do you know what the next miracle was? Because Jesus broke the limitation. He said, okay, we're not going that way. Okay, I can feed 5,000. That's, you think I'm God now, or nearly God. But we're going to go beyond that level. The next miracle he does is he walks on water. He really broke their limitations, So these things are going to break limitations. So you may say, oh, I've got all these problems, all these things. I'm now moving to the being, because I could talk all about the doing. And we could do a whole day's workshop. Nothing will happen. You'll have a lot more information. You'll have a lot more knowledge, but no wisdom. What I'm trying to get into your heart is changing who you are, or who you see you are. The being. Who you are on Monday. And that change through thanksgiving, through generosity, breaks things. We see that throughout the Bible. The Shunammite woman, that generosity of giving that, having a side extension done. Yeah? She got an upstairs extension done, with a 1 bed and a table. And in that, she overcame a limitation of being barren. Yeah. Elisha and the widow, we know that with the oil. But the biggest one I love it is John chapter 4 verse 7. Here's Jesus with a Shunammite woman. And the first thing he tells her, what do you tell her? This is very rude, isn't it? I mean, this is Jesus. He's tired. The guys have gone out to McDonald's to get some Macs. And he's sitting there. And the first thing he tells her, this is a woman he has never met before. He says, give me a drink. And you think that's really rude, Jesus. You should ask her who she is, how her life is, what's happening. No, just give me a drink. What I'm trying to say is, that act of generosity by her, if you read 15 verses down, broke that spirit on that region in Samaria. And a lot of people came to the Lord who would never, and in fact they say, it doesn't say they just came to the Lord, he stayed on 2 more days. He did overtime in that place. You know, this meeting went on 2 more days. And more guys came to faith. But it started with that act of generosity where Jesus was tired, he had a need. And she just fulfilled that need to a stranger. So what I'm saying is, which strangers are you ignoring that God's sending your way? Because that act of generosity is going to break a spirit over you, over your region, over poverty around Wales, if you think about it. Because if we get into this helpless, I'm hard done by, you look at some of the leaders of Scotland, they're looking at this, it's okay for them, but we are hard done by. That's a spirit which engulfs the region, which changes, if you look at some of those leaders, you can just see there's anger, it just changes their whole nature. So I just encourage you just to get into that generous spirit, that act of generosity, act of thanksgiving. Proverbs 22:9 says, he who has a generous eye will be blessed. It's interesting, you got a different type of eye. So he who has a generous eye will be blessed, for he gives of his bread to the poor. There's also in Proverbs 11:24 and 25, you can read more on generosity. But I'm not doing a teaching here, I'm trying to just have something that touches your heart on being someone, being who God has called you to be. And we hear that, but we've got to actually be who God has called us to be. Out there in a bus stop, in the office, in a bakery, or in a business, or in a school. Wherever we are, all I've found is, the biggest thing I've found is, you've got to be hearing the voice of God. It says, like, those who are led by the Spirit are sons of God. And so about a month ago, I had 3 big meetings in London, and I was preparing for them, and I was reading. I got up earlier, so at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was just reading Philippians, and I come to Philippians 2:6, and all I had, I thought I'd just do two quick minutes on the word and say a prayer and get straight into my preparing for those 3 meetings, because I've got a lot to do. And I read this verse, and it hijacked my day, and it was Paul saying, I'm sending Timothy to you guys. He's the only guy I trust. I've got, he had lots of leaders he'd come across, and so many, and obviously there were 12 apostles as well. But, here he says, the only guy I trust who won't have an interest of his own, but he'll have the interest of Jesus. Because what he was saying was, we all start with trying to do what God's telling us to do, but eventually we get our own agenda, our own interest, and we're building our own kingdom, not his kingdom. Oh yeah, I give 10% to the church, but I'm building my kingdom. To help the church, but it's not his kingdom. So so my day got hijacked when I read that scripture, and I just repented. I just put aside my preparation for the three meetings I had. I just spent some time with the Lord. I just felt the Lord just saying, I'm sending appointments to you. So I'm now, and no one was coming, and we're in a business meeting, sitting in Carluccio's in Waterloo. It's a very good place to have a meeting, very convenient. And as we're sitting there, suddenly a guy comes in and he's serving us. And I remembered him from a week before. And I said, hey, and he remembered me. So I said, hi. And then normally you'd be engaged in your conversation with the meeting, but I just asked him about, and he said he's from Bulgaria, and things like that, etc. And then at the end, I just took his name. And in that day, every meeting I went to, someone who was serving, or someone at the hotel, someone, etc., was always linked to something about to do with God and things. I knew there was a connection. Key thing was, I just felt, so this guy, the first guy, was a guy called Krasi, and I just felt, I'll get a Bulgarian bar, because I know another guy's a Bulgarian, and ordered it. He got it for me, so I thought I'd take it for him. And over the last month, I just have been so busy, and it's always been sitting in my car, and by the time you go to London, it's like, I should have brought that, So for a whole month, he's sitting in my car, but last week, I just felt, I was going, and suddenly I felt the Holy Spirit just say, take the Bible. And I took it, went across, and I wasn't going to Carluccio's in Waterloo, I was going somewhere else, but I actually made a detour. I said, okay, I've got to go, I'll go give it to him. So I thought, there it is, I'll give it to him. And I was disappointed. I asked, where's Cressy? They said it's his day off. So, oh, I got it wrong. I thought I was being led by something. And they said, he's had a day off. He never takes a day off. But it was his birthday today. He's taken a day off. So I then sat there, had a coffee, and I wrote a nice scripture and something on the front. And it's a nice big Bible with gold and everything on there. And I wrote it, packaged it, and said, hey, can you give this to him? And 3 days ago, I was at Carluccio's, and I made a meeting to happen at Carluccio's. I wanted to get feedback. So I actually, you go sort of shape these things. And Cressy comes. And he came all the way because he wasn't serving us. We're in an area, and he comes across. He says, "Hey, thank you for the Bible." So, and then he said the next thing. He said, "For 4 years I wanted to read the Bible. I had a desire to read the Bible." Yeah. And what also hit him was, he said, "How did you know it was my birthday?" I didn't have time, so I said, we'll have a coffee, and I'll tell you all about it later. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, you've got to be led by the Spirit, because God's wanting to connect you. And the key thing I've realized after 34 years of business, or whatever, even in ministry or whatever, I feel I've come with one phrase, which is business, or whatever you do, is an excuse to meet people. If you believe that, then you'll never refuse a meeting. Because you'll never think that was a waste of my time, because actually, what you're doing is a waste of time, or what you're doing is not the main thing. The main thing is not the main thing. The main thing is about you meeting people. So my key strategy and what I imbibe into my mentorees is never refuse a meeting. What you're doing is an excuse to meet people. Now, you may get nothing out of it, but the key thing is God is looking after you. You're doing you're looking after His business. Guess what? He can look after your business better than you can. And I found that's a great partnership. I love doing His business because He does my business much better. So praise God. Praise God.